is up 10-0 after they got eliminated from the playoffs.
Yes,
I
I was
fucking
just
hate these.
watching.
I hate these guys.
Well, they can't even. It's like you said a couple weeks ago. They can't even tank right.
No, we can. Yeah, we can't even lose right.
Well, welcome into the Section YY8 podcast. I'm Negative Niece, joined by Harb. This week's show is once again brought to you by Andrew's Physical Therapy, powered by P4. Want to make sure I got that part right. Um, they're partnering with us for the foreseeable future, so appreciate those guys coming on with us. Be sure to visit them at one of their two locations, Blaine, Tennessee, or Strawberry Plains. You can find them online by Googling Andrew's Physical Therapy. I saw a video, Harbin. They were actually listening to last week's show. The actual Mike Andrews was listening to last week's show on the way to Columbus yesterday. So hope they like their investment.
I hope they do too, because I'm gonna try to pop in and squeeze in an appointment tomorrow morning from that absolute beatdown that I took in Columbus. Hopefully, Mike's a miracle worker. I don't know if he can work this one out for us.
I would say there's a lot of us that need a little PT after last night.
Absolutely, yeah. That was brutal. That was
Not a
brutal.
not a good night. Harb and I got back earlier this afternoon here on Sunday, back to beautiful Strawberry Plains from Columbus, Ohio. Very frigid Columbus, Ohio. Apologize for my voice. I've been battling a cold all week long. Was feeling better yesterday, and I guess last night probably didn't help any. Standing out in sub freezing temperatures for 6, 7 hours, but I got to support them boys. So um, they didn't they didn't really give anything back to me for supporting them, but it was cool experience to see Ohio Stadium. Um, it's funny. We met my uncle's friend Chad Webb, who's an Ohio State fan, and he'd been here before, and I got to meet Chad over the years through my uncle. Um, but I mentioned to my uncle about 3 weeks ago, maybe longer than that. It's like, man, I'd like to go to Ohio Stadium sometime, maybe see the Michigan game or something like that. And he's like, oh, we can take care of that. Well, literally, like 2 weeks later, we were playing them or get scheduled to play them, and we get to go. So that was cool to see that place, older historic stadium. Um, the bathroom situation, I saw several tweets about it. I tweeted about it while I was standing in line, but I was gone from halftime and missed the first 2.5 drives of the third quarter just waiting in line for the bathroom. It was awful, Harbin. I mean, it was, but I had to go. Like, I couldn't hold it. Well, I mean, obviously, I could have held it longer. I held it for 45 minutes, but um, that was ridiculous. The bathroom situation at Ohio Stadium was terrible. And even though Ohio State fans were like, we don't know what's going on. Like, we've never seen it like this.
It got to the point where I was about to call you and check on you. I thought you'd gotten arrested.
I'm gonna say,
Or you were bringing us back some hot chocolate and some pretzels, or maybe you was being nice for the group, but I went with the more logical thing and thought that you gotten arrested.
sometimes, like in the past, during games like that, I would just wander off and take a stroll around the stadium and just try to walk it off, from the kicking we were getting. But no, I was just waiting in line to urinate. But anyways, cool experience, except for the final score. Tennessee loses 42-17. Harbin and I about froze to death, along with, I don't know, what do you think? 25, 30,000 Tennessee fans were up there yesterday
I
in the
think that's
stadium.
I think that's a fair number. I think bare minimum there's 25,000 in the stadium. I
I
think there's
heard
just off eye shot. I would say there's closer to 30 just from how many had on Carhartts and black jackets on top of their orange stuff. But yeah, I'd say 30.
Yeah, it's probably about. I said anywhere from 25 to 30, so it may have been more. I don't know, but there was a lot of orange in that place last night. Shout out to Vol Nation for making the trek north. You know, the sad thing about that is, Harbin, though, I said it on last week's show. I said we we might be setting ourselves up for disaster. That many people going up there, and not it's not the not winning part. It's going up there and laying an egg. And I wonder in the future if that will deter people from making a trip like this again, because we might get in the playoffs again next year and we might have to go on the road again. And who knows where it'll be, but if it's within 5, 6 hours, is that many people going to make that trek again? I mean, maybe, but people are going to think twice. Like, I don't know, I went last year and we got railroaded. I don't know if I want to go back again or not. I mean, that's the bad thing is when that many people invest, and it's not that we lost. Like if we'd have lost 27 to 21 or 27 to 24, that's one thing. But going up there and just never really in it. I know we got it down to 21 to 10 at the half and we had a little momentum, but it just never really felt like Tennessee was going to do anything that game. But I wonder going forward if people reevaluate that.
Well, here's my question: why wouldn't people reevaluate? I mean,
Question.
you for people that work a normal schedule, uh, good amount of them take a half day on Friday, drive up, obviously get your game tickets. You get 2 nights of a hotel. You spend this money here. You spend this money here. You obviously take 3 days to do this thing. You go in there and you may not be 100% expecting a win, but you're definitely expecting us to compete. And you go out and watch that. I mean, if the same opportunity arises next year, somewhere different or same place or wherever, realistically, why would you go? Now, our fan base isn't very realistic, and
Oh
I'm
yeah.
part of that problem because right now, the way I'm thinking is like, why would I ever go to a road game again, especially if it's a nighttime kickoff? A nighttime kickoff road game is an automatic loss in our schedule right now. There's no doubt about it. Until proven otherwise, go ahead and mark it down. By the way, we play in Gainesville November 22nd of 25. If that game kicks off at 7 or later, go ahead and mark it down.
That
And,
game could kick off at
and,
5 o'clock and be under the lights that time of year.
and what I'm saying is, we've talked about this multiple times on this show. It's not happenstance. We have a sample size. If the game kicks off in the afternoon or at night, and it's not against Kentucky or Vanderbilt on the road, we're more than likely going to lose. It just is what it is. And I'm venting a little bit. I'm pissed off. I'm hurt. But it's gotten to a point, at least right now, at 9:12 on December 22nd, that I have zero confidence in us on the road if it's not during the day. Zero. Used to, it was small confidence. I have zero at this point. And I know this is kind of reverse roles because Nease is obviously negative Nease, and I'm normally the upbeat one trying to hype everybody up. No, no, I'm living in reality tonight, boys and girls, whoever's listening. It's the biggest problem of this program right now. and obviously the amount of blue chips, but we'll get to that here in a little bit. I mean, we could play at Berktar Stadium in Jefferson City against Carson Newman. If that game kicked off at 7:30, I know who I'm taking on the money line. I don't feel bad about saying that. I love how much progress this program has made in the last 4 years. We talked about this in the truck on the way home today. 5, 6 years ago, we was losing to Georgia State at home. We made the 12-team playoff. We're playing a meaningful game and taking 30,000 fans to Ohio State. We've made a ton of progress, and I give this coaching staff and the players all the credit in the world for that. But if we go to a true road game and it's dark, forget about it. And I hope that if they don't hear me, they hear other people say it, and they take offense to it and figure it the hell out, because it's getting to a point where it's annoying.
It's becoming an issue. Well, I shouldn't say it's becoming an issue. It's an issue for this football program right now. I don't say this team because it wasn't just this year. I mean, we looked up a stat I remember if it was last night or today, but we looked up this stat and it's the last 2 years Tennessee's played 9 road games and they're 3-6 in those road games. And that is wins over Kentucky, Vanderbilt, and Oklahoma. Now, normally you would say win at Oklahoma, that's a pretty good win. They obviously weren't as good this year as Oklahoma normally is, or you would think they would be. But that's not very good, I guess you might want to say. I mean, it's just not. And for a program who we've said it on here, I mean, they're not there yet. It was obvious, painfully obvious last night that they're close, but they're not to that. They're not national title contenders. And I was careful to label them that this year. I labeled them playoff contenders for those that are keeping track at home. Never said we were national championship contenders. Now, I thought if things fell our way and we played our brand of football, we could possibly make a run. And there was others that thought that too. But this program has, I don't know why. I don't understand what it is. Um, they have a problem playing football on the road. And until they beat somebody not named Vandy in Kentucky on the road on a consistent basis, I'm like you, Harb. I don't know that I can pick them if they're playing at 4 o'clock or later. Especially, you said we play Florida on November 22nd next year, I think. They play them at 4 o'clock or later. It's going to be dark at 5. It's after the time change. So I don't know that I'll have any confidence in picking Tennessee. They've got a lot of, I don't know if I want to call it soul searching to do, but there is a problem within that football program of playing at night. And I don't know if it's in game coaching or game planning or how they're prepping these guys. I don't know. I don't understand what it is. Like, what is the difference? I know the atmosphere is loud wherever you go, especially in the SEC, whether it's a 3:30 kickoff or not. You saw it at Georgia a couple years ago. That was a 3:30 game and it was super loud. The energy in that place was off the charts. Come to Neyland Stadium on a Saturday. I know we're talking Tennessee play on the road, but come to Neyland Stadium on a Saturday for a 3:30 game. Atmosphere is off the charts. A lot of time for a noon game. It's still like that. In those night games, there's a little bit more juice to them. But I just don't understand why they can't figure this out. Like, what is, I don't know. I'm sitting here asking a rhetorical question, like, what is the problem? But it's something that Josh Heupel, he gets paid a lot of money. to coach the Tennessee Volunteers, and it's something he's going to have to figure out. And I really like Josh Heupel. I think he's done a great job here. We talked about it. Uh, talked about it. My dad called today, and he was like, Tennessee, if you would have asked 4 years ago when we hired Josh Heupel that Tennessee would win 7 games, 11 games, 9 games, 10 games, win the Orange Bowl, win the Citrus Bowl, go to the college football playoffs, beat Alabama twice in 3 years, beat Florida twice in 3 years. I think I would sign up. Most Tennessee fans would sign up for that, and I think he's done a well of a job here. But it's get almost now. It's time to start. How do we take that next step? And I think that's where that program's at. This was a good stepping stone for this program. I think we talked in the off season or leading up to the season. This was a fringe playoff team, should make the playoffs. That's the goal. Anything past that's gravy. They did that, so now it's time to build on that. But one of the things they're going to have to figure out is playing at night. And I don't know the answer, but they've got to figure it out.
Well, the good and bad thing is you're not in the Big Ten, so you don't have to play at Ohio State every year. But you also don't get your big games at noon.
Yeah.
And if we got our big games at noon, hell, we'd win the SEC.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm irritated. I thought I was over it, but I'm just the way we came out is unreal. Really. Now I do want to be fair. There's a talent discrepancy between Ohio State and Tennessee, and we all knew that Ohio State was a little more talented than us, but we had the orange blinders on. They're a lot more talented than us. Just is what it is. And I don't think it's necessarily starters versus starters. I think the starters are decently close, but it's the depth.
Yeah.
And we got exposed at multiple points in that game this weekend. For one, our linebackers got deathly exposed. I mean, crossing route and drags and misdirection routes out the wazoo. Day put this on Twitter. I said it in the crowd. Chip Kelly absolutely dog walked Tim Banks. I mean, it was a masterclass. I'll give Chip Kelly all the credit in the world. Our defense looked absolutely lost, especially in the first quarter. Thought we bounced back decently in the second quarter, but that's after you got punched in the mouth 3 times. It's like Mike Tyson said, everybody's got a game plan until you get punched in the mouth.
Yeah.
So, but offensive line got manhandled. I don't think that didn't surprise me, but that was the biggest thing that pissed me off. The biggest thing for sure. Because the whole talk all week was, how will Ohio State's offensive line handle Tennessee's defensive front? That was the discussion all week. And it was like, whoever wins that battle is going to win the game. Well, not only did they dominate that battle, we got 0 pressure. We just kept trying to send 4 the whole game. What game did that remind you of, Nease?
I think it's that one I went to in Athens.
Gotcha. And the Alabama game in 23 and the Arkansas game this year. And I'm not going to bore y'all.
What?
I'm not going to bore y'all with going into that. But yeah, Will Howard had all day to throw. And to be honest with you, he had one of his better games of the season. He made a couple throws that were NFL level throws. And I will give him all the credit in the world for that. Jeremiah Smith, absolute dog. True freshman. He torched us. props to you, young man. But for the most part, it was the drag routes. It was the play action boots to where they would have a running back or a tight end out in the flat on the other side. How many crossing routes did they throw to the right side of the field on a rollout and connect on them? Wide assed open.
I lost
6,
count.
7,
I lost
8.
count. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. We could count in Spanish and get there. It was frustrating. It was frustrating. I'm sure it looked terrible on TV. Y'all listening that didn't go feel the same frustration I feel. I mean, I'm not any more pissed off because I'm tired from the car ride today and froze my butt off last night. Y'all are just as mad as we are. It's the same stuff that we watched in struggles all year this year. And like I said, Ohio State does have more talent than us. Russell Smith put out a tweet earlier today. I believe it was Russell Smith, was it not?
It was, yes.
Tennessee fielded 41 4- and 5-star players for last night's game. And Ohio State, correct me on the number, I believe the number was 68 or 69, one of the two.
I think it's something like that, yeah.
There it is. I mean, I do think Ryan Day outcoached Josh Heupel. I'll be 100% honest with that. I think Tennessee fans got the wrong memo, myself included. We saw Ohio State get beat by Michigan at home. We thought we had an Ohio State team licking their wounds. Now, we had a pissed off Ohio State team that has tons of talent. Arguably most talent in the country. Definitely top 3. And we got their best. And they got arguably our worst effort of the season. I don't know how you feel about that. That's the way I look at it, though. Come out flat, you look scared the first couple drives. That's just bad recipe. You're going to get your ass dusted when those two things come together. One more thing, semi on the optimistic end. First drive of the game, Ohio State gets ball. It's 3rd and 8, 3rd and 7, whatever it was. Tennessee's got Will Howard sacked 10 yards behind the line of scrimmage. We get a face mask. It's blatant. Absolutely blatant. I mean, terrible face mask. I have no idea why you try to grab his face mask in that scenario. Worst case scenario, you just give him a hug and he throws it into the ground and they're punting either way.
That's not the first time that a Tennessee defensive lineman has done that this year. I guess over aggressiveness, whatever, but that's the mental mistakes that this team makes, that this program makes, that holds them back from going further than they are right now.
In my opinion, that might have been the biggest play of the game. If you think about it, it sounds crazy because it was third play of the game and it was in the first minute. But if you just go up and hug him, worst case scenario for Tennessee in that scenario is Will Howard throws it into the turf. They go 3 and out and punt it to us. And if you look at the recency of Ohio State, Will Howard starts to think after that. Ryan Day starts to think about that. The fans start groaning in the lower deck. I'm not saying we go down and drive right down their throat and score, because I saw how our offense looked in person, live and in color. But I can promise you we're not down 21-0 after the first quarter if you just don't blatantly do that. I think I was a tone setter because directly after that, obviously it's 15 yards. They move up. They throw a wheel route to the running back, good throw and catch. Directly after that, about a 30-yarder to Jeremiah Smith in the corner of the end zone. Crowd goes wild. We're rattled. I believe we go 3 and out after that, and they go right down the field. It's 14-0. Boom. If you just don't rip their helmet off, you can avoid that sequence right there. Worst case scenario, you're down 7-0 after the second drive. I don't know. It's a combination, and we're over critiquing, but I'm venting, and I know y'all have vented, so y'all are gonna have to listen to me for a second. It's a combination of the mental errors and just the flat out execution. Like when you're playing on the road and they have almost 30 more 4 and 5 star players than you do, you can't be dumber than them. You just can't. Like, you have to execute better than they do when you're outmanned. And we did it on the offensive side of the ball, and we did it on the defensive side of the ball. If it wasn't penalties, it was getting burnt, like we said, on the crossing routes and the misdirections. On offense, it was story of the season for road games and pass protection. Our tackles were non-existent. John Campbell Jr. got benched. Bring in big bad Dane Davis. Yeah, he did a lot. No offense to either one of those young men, but it is what it is. I don't know. I'm not attacking anyone's effort. I've seen a lot of people attack the player's effort outside of Nico. I think that's cheap, and I disagree with you. I think these guys gave it all they got, but it's but I think it's fair to be critical and frustrated with the outcome. I'm not attacking anybody's effort. I think everybody gave their all. I really do. But
Yeah, I don't think they weren't playing hard. Now, you could say that after the game was kind of in doubt when they gave up that touchdown right when we left. It made it
that was
42 to.
awful.
That was awful. You could say that, but I mean, early in the game start, I don't think their effort was there. I think it's several things, and I don't want to get too long-winded here because I feel like I'm, you know, kicking a dead horse. But Tennessee didn't have, and we didn't know this. I mean, we Dylan Sampson had injured his hamstring at Vandy a few weeks ago, and apparently it never quite healed up, and he wasn't 100%. They never let that out, but he was not really available. That hurts. He's SEC Player of the Year. Let's not forget that. That hurt. Um, let's be honest. I've tried to take the back of our wide receivers. They're just not very good. I mean, I think they could be good. And I've been trying to tell myself, like, well, they'll break out of it. They'll start to get things here. Like, where's Dante Thornton? Squirrel White's been hurt all year. I understand that. But even at 100%, is he that big of a game changer? I don't think so. We've got a 5 star that it gets out there on the field, but they either don't try to get him the football or he's not open. In Mike Matthews, I mean, Staley was out there, Braylon Staley, freshman wide receiver, who is a talented young receiver. And I get it, Caleb Webb is transferring, Chaz Nimrod is transferring. It's the receivers are not helping the freshman quarterback out. One thing we talked about, my uncle and I talked about it, and Patrick brought it up in the truck. I don't know if it was last night or today. And I've thought about it this afternoon when I got back. And look, I like Nico Iamaleava. I think he's a very talented quarterback and still could be a very good quarterback. But This is a big off season for Nico, in my opinion. I know he doesn't have probably the most talented wide receiver room around him, and there's other things that are going into it, but he's got to be better, and he got better as the year went along, I thought. But he's going to have competition coming in behind him for the next 2 years. He's got 5 stars rolling right in here. And if he can't get the job done better than what they did this year, I would assume this staff and most Tennessee fans are going to be asking to take a look at these other two guys. You got, what is it, McIntyre coming in next year, and then that year after that, the Faison kid from North Carolina, both 5 stars. Faison's number 1 quarterback in the country and coming in the next in 2 years. So Nico can't just sit back there and like, well, this is my job for the next 2 years because it's not. And there's a lot. I think the defense was good this year. It wasn't elite like some wanted to let on it was. Remember early on in the season, you said Bobby Stanton said this was the best defensive line in Tennessee history. I don't think that's anywhere remotely true. They're good, but you can't tell me that defensive line from 98 to 2001 is not as good or is not as good as this team. Those lines in that era were way better than this, and they wouldn't have been pushed around in a game like that last night. And I'm not saying it was their fault, but Tennessee got whipped on all sides of the ball last night. They got pushed around in the front. They couldn't get pressure on Will Howard. He had all day to sit back there and throw. He picked us apart. I was looking at the stats here. It's very reminiscent of the Georgia game a few weeks ago. Will Howard was 24 or 29 for 311 yards. Will Howard completes 72% of his passes on the season. So he completes high percentage. He threw a lot of crossing routes, like Harbin said, but he took deep shots. He had a long of 40, 2 TDs, 1 interception on a deflected pass, but 24 or 29, 311 yards. He had all day. He was playing 7-on-7. Compare it to Nico, who was being harassed all night long because his offensive line couldn't protect him, but he was 14 of 31 for 104 yards, a long of 21 yards. He was sacked 4 times. Tennessee, they are known as a rushing team. Dylan Sampson, like the aforementioned Dylan Sampson, SEC Player of the Year, had 2 rushes for 6 yards. Peyton Lewis, 10 for 82. Deshaun Bishop, 7 rushes for 23 yards. Nico rushed the ball 20 times, Harbin, for 82 yards last night and 2 touchdowns. Now, I will say this about Nico, and I'm questioning his quarterback play. We thought, and we were told after Joe Milton left, Joe Milton couldn't run this offense. He just wasn't smart enough, or he just couldn't grasp it. But Nico's going to come in, and that wasn't going to be the same. We're going to push the ball down the field, and it was going to be back to 2022 and 2021 offense. Never happened. Never happened. And I think a lot of that's on. There's a lot of things going on there. I just don't think Nico fully grasped everything yet. I think he's not got the most talented wide receivers, and I don't think the offensive scheme is what it used to be. Whether that's Alex Golish not being there, or whether that's we said it walking back to the truck last night. I think Tennessee just decided to run the football this year and play defense. Nothing wrong with that, but don't tell us. And maybe we assumed, and you know what they say about assuming, but maybe we just assumed that it would be back to that when you bring in a 5-star quarterback who's the number 2 or 3 quarterback in his class, and he's supposed to change that, and it never happened. But I will say, Nico played his guts out last night. I mean, he took some hits. Apparently, his helmet got cracked early in the game, and he had to get a new one. But he ran the football hard. I don't think he ever quit. I think he played his tail off. Just didn't execute very well in the passing game, but that's been a consistent theme with this team all year long. They've just not been able in the passing game to hit any big plays, sans the Vanderbilt game or the play in the bye games like UTEP and UTC and Kent State. Take those out, and I think Nico only threw 4 touchdown passes the rest of the year. Um, he's got to get better this offseason. The passing game as a whole, it's not just him. Pass protection's got to get better. The wide receiver room's got to get better. And the play calling has got to get better. Next year, if Tennessee wants to make that next step, I kept seeing all day, Harbin, you probably saw this. A lot of people were tweeting, well, Tennessee lost that 98 Orange Bowl to Nebraska 42-17, and they won the SEC the next year. Yeah, they did. Programs were also in a different place than they are.
That 97 team was loaded.
The dynamic of the SEC was totally different back then as well. You had Tennessee, Florida. That was it back then. That was Tennessee's competition was Florida. Alabama was down. Georgia was not nearly what they are now. LSU wasn't very good. Auburn wasn't very good. Kentucky was a doormat with Vanderbilt. South Carolina was a doormat. I mean, the conference was nowhere remotely like it is now, where you've got 10 teams that are legit contenders on the state national stage. But I kept seeing that today, and I was like, yeah, that's great to think about. Like, oh yeah, next year we're going to win the national title. I would love that, but it's not the same thing. We're in a different time and place, but Tennessee's got a lot of work to do this offseason. I'm going to wrap it up. I said I didn't want to get long-winded, but here I am. They got to get better on offense going into next year. But Heupel, over the next few weeks, couple weeks maybe even, he's going to be working this Christmas holiday because he's got a lot of roster management to do. I saw this afternoon where Christian Harrison, a defensive back, is reportedly putting his name into the portal. And we've lost two or three wide receivers, picked up offensive linemen. So a lot of work to do, roster management. This team will, I don't want to say it's a rebuild, but they're losing a lot on the front four. Basically, the whole defensive line, starting defensive line is gone. But the good thing about that is Tennessee played a lot of players on the defensive line this year. Offensive line is going to have a whole new look, hopefully for the better. And we'll see. Apple's got a lot of work to do this offseason to the way we're talking, Harbin, it sounds like we only won 7 games this year. I mean, does it not sound like golly, it's just not very good. Well, they went 10-3. I mean, that's the good thing about it.
It is good, but in the moment, this is how we're supposed to talk when you play in a playoff game and it felt like a quote unquote bonus game. That's what some people call bowl games now, is bonus games. That's what it felt like. And obviously I know that probably 100% of the players didn't treat it that way. Now, I'm not saying in any form or fashion that they did. That's just the way it felt. It's frustrating. Like, we've got a lot to do this winter. And I think specifically you have, like, your first priority is offensive line, especially tackles. We've already got that guard from Arizona coming in. What's his name? Wendell Moe? Is that his name?
Yeah. Yes.
Really good guy. He's probably going to be Spraggins' replacement because we're losing Spraggins, Mays. I don't know what Hurd and Campbell Jr. statuses are. Hopefully they go to Lincoln Financial or State Farm or something like that. Yeah, I mean, you gotta figure it out. But I think it starts with bringing in really solid guys out of high school and developing them. And I think you can agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we have to prove. That's one more thing that I have on Heupel is offensive line development. There's some guys that he gets that are just studs and it just works. or they were guys that are already here. But as far as bringing guys in and truly developing them on the offensive line, I haven't seen it. And I want to see it because it's arguably, if not the most, it's definitely a top three most important thing for your roster development. And I just haven't seen it. And we gambled on transfer portal offensive lineman this year. Didn't work. Interior did, which all the interior guys were homegrown, were they not? I know
Carrick,
Sprague
Carrick was, um,
Mays
Mays
was Spraggins.
I can't remember.
I
I'd have
think
to
he
look.
was.
I
I think
think
he
he,
was. Without looking at it, I'm just gonna say he was. Y'all can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's the majority of the issue here. Because look at all of our impact guys; they were all homegrown, and in no way, shape, or form am I a Georgia fan, but Kirby Smart is not wrong very often, and that's why he has two national championships in his relatively short career. He's not huge on the portal. Obviously, he uses it because you have to nowadays. But his biggest emphasis is guys that want to come to Georgia outside of high school and staying in that system for 3 to 4 years. And you can love the guy, you can hate the guy, anywhere in between. Hell, you can even say he's wrong, but his track record proves otherwise. You can have a transfer guy here and there, but I don't think you can ever compete having a ton of them. I really don't.
you, you look at the offensive line. So they're losing Jackson Lampley, John Campbell Jr., uh, um, Spraggins, Carrick, uh, um, Dane Davis. I don't know about Lance Hurd. Let me look at him real quick. Lance Hurd he's a sophomore, so he'll be back. But look at the others that are coming back. You've got Max Anderson, freshman, hasn't really played. Jesse Perry, freshman. Brian Grant, a redshirt sophomore. Um, Larry Johnson the third, who's a redshirt sophomore that played community college. Gage Ginther, a freshman. Shamarid Omarov, a redshirt freshman. There's some guys there to develop, but like you said, they haven't done that to a great extent during the Josh Heupel era here. And it's going to have to be done this offseason unless they just want to keep patching it by hitting the portal and hoping you get the right guys. And they could do that. They've already went out there and got the kid from Arizona, and they've signed a five-star freshman, quite possibly the best player in our class this year, in David Sanders, who spurned Ohio State. He's probably gonna play right out of the gate next year. So
You think he's regretting his decision at all?
I hope not, but too late. He's already signed. I guess it's too late, but
It's too late
he's
for
been practicing with the team. So
It's too late for 1 year.
yeah, but a lot of storylines this off season. There'll probably be some news within the portal over the next couple weeks. I know bowl games are still going on all this upcoming week, and the playoffs continue next weekend, or sorry, New Year's Day with the Rose Bowl and Sugar and all them. So, um, it's going to be an interesting off season for Tennessee, but like we said, this program is in such a better place than it was. It still feels a little bit, I don't want to say unstable, might not be a good word. It's not unstable, but it wouldn't take much for this program. I don't want to say to fall back to 5 and 6 wins. I don't see that happening, but it could fall back to a 8 win season or a 9 win season at one time, one year here or there. Keep in mind, a lot of people forget this, that Tennessee's playing with less scholarships than a lot of their peers are. I mean, over the starting in 20, I think was it 2021 or 2022, for the next 6 seasons, Tennessee would lose a total of 28 scholarships. And they hit them really heavy the first couple years with that, and it kind of slows down. But, Tennessee's without two or three scholarships every year and for the next couple of years. So when Harbin was talking about the gap in talent, where Ohio State's got 65 or 70 4 and 5 stars, and Tennessee's got 48 and 49, that's partially part of the reason why. Now, Ohio State's been a player on the national stage for 30 years, where Tennessee took a nap for the last 15. We were heavy players on the stage in the late 80s all the way through the mid 2000s, all the way to the late 2000s, and then we went night for 15 years. Now we're back on the national stage, but we're still trying to rebuild the program to a certain extent. And we're not to Ohio State's level as far as talent, building that talent up. We're also playing with one arm tied behind our back. So keep that in mind when you see a stat like that where they've got all these blue chip players compared to what we have. It's funny. We were talking at breakfast this morning. Tennessee's ranked like 10th or 11th in the country in recruiting, or they're like 8th in the SEC. So you think like, man, this team's got all this talent. They're the 10th best team in recruiting out of 134, but they're like 8th or 9th in their own conference. It's kind of brutal when you think about it sometimes, but that's why you got to develop these guys when they get here, and that's what Tennessee's got to do this offseason. So we'll talk more as we get into the offseason, and there's some gaps in basketball talk and this spring and summer, but um, overall, I'm very pleased with the season. That Arkansas game left a sour taste in my mouth, and obviously last night did. But I think once we, get through the holidays, take a step back, the season ends here in a few weeks. We'll look back, I think, rather fondly on this season. There's a lot of good things happen this year. Beat Alabama at home in a thriller. You beat Florida at home for the second time in 3 years, and only the third time in the last 20 something years. And uh, there's a lot that this team did that accomplished, and winning double digit games in a season in the SEC is nothing to scoff at, and I don't think we should take that for granted. But good season, lot to build on. Got a lot of work to do this offseason, Harbin.
I agree. I'm pleased with the season as well. We both we both predicted 10-2. I think that's what a lot of people predicted. I think we got there in different fashions than what some of us thought. Definitely a different fashion, but different avenues is a better way to put it. Um, yeah, uh, freshman quarterback, spotty offensive line. You go 10-2, get in the playoff. I'll take it. That's with a level head of thinking, without being taking away my rage from this weekend. Yeah, it's a good season. You have a lot to build on, but you also have a lot to do, like you said. Like there is a ton of momentum to build on, but you got to take advantage of the momentum because it can go away like that.
Yeah.
So, and I trust, especially the head guy in charge, and I trust most of the guys that he's got under him. I'm not arguing against the fact that we may need to change a couple position coaches, but with that being said, I would give this season probably an I'd probably give it an A minus. I think A minus is a fair grade for this season. If you want to be extremely critical, maybe a B plus. But it's hard to give a B grade when you beat Alabama and Florida in the same season. I understand both of them were lower than what they normally have been, but it's hard to, and especially making the first ever college football playoff. It's hard to put a B on the grade, so I'm gonna give it an A minus. But overall, I'm pleased. I'm upset. I'm upset about this weekend, just like everybody else is. But in the spring, when we look back, we're gonna be fairly pleased with how this looks, and looking forward to next season like it never happened. So we'll see. Now that we've been there, I think that I think that is a ton of it adds a ton of experience and momentum to the players and coaches because now you've been there, you know what it takes to get there, and now you can build on what it takes to advance in it, and then we can go from there.
And I
So
think that's what people were trying to get across when they were talking about Tennessee lost to Nebraska 42-17 in that Orange Bowl, and then came back and won the SEC and the national title the next year. Because a lot of you all listening may not remember that game. Some of you do. I remember it a little bit, but I just remember it triggered a change in how Tennessee approached things. They got whipped up front by Nebraska, who was a physical at the time, option attack. They pushed Tennessee around up front, and Philip Fulmer and his staff said, if we want to, win the national title, which they were technically in the de facto national title game that year against Nebraska, that they got to get more physical up front. And that's what they did that offseason. They got more physical, and they ran the football the next year really well. They played really good defense. Their front seven was just hellraisers, and I mean that defense was legit, and that Nebraska game triggered that. So I think that's what people were trying to get at. And I wasn't trying to be critical of him. I just didn't want to see that today because I just don't think it's like I don't think it's the same thing because the landscape of college football is totally different than it was back then. Like Tennessee was number one or number two in the SEC back then. They're not right now, or maybe top five or six, but we're not. So, anyways, good season, fun season. Had good times at the tailgates this year. For anybody that stopped by this year, it was good times. We had a brief tailgate yesterday in the cold weather there in Columbus, Ohio, right next to the St. John's Arena. We saw the Hayes brothers and Connor and Buckeye Bain, unfortunately, was there. I didn't mean unfortunate, Buckeye Bain. We were glad to have you there, even though you were screaming OHIO constantly.
bloody
Um,
murder.
man, I think his voice cracked a couple times.
Yeah, 28 years old and his voice still cracking.
He
Unbelievable.
also, Buckeye Bain also wanted me to let you know that you owe him for that bet y'all made pregame.
Yeah, I got his 17 text messages. For every single text message that he sends me, it's going to add 12 hours to the payment. And for those listening, the bet wasn't even on the game. It was what the coin toss was going to be because I don't bet on Tennessee games. So,
So
so yeah,
Bain, it sounds like you're gonna be waiting a while for the payment.
yeah, I still haven't texted him back, and I'm not going to anytime soon. So,
Well, he listens, so when he's listening to this, he'll know why. So there you go, Bain. Very quickly, Tennessee basketball kicks it back off this coming week on Monday night versus MTSU. I looked up MTSU. I don't want to say they're a cakewalk because they're probably going to compete for their conference. But Tennessee should handle them at TBA this week, and then they've got Norfolk State before they start SEC play, so we'll talk more about them coming up. But they didn't play anything since last we recorded after the Illinois game, so they'll kick it back off again on Monday night at Thompson Bowling against the Blue Raiders. Before we go, Harbin, very quickly, do you have a hater and loser?
Would it be cherry picking to say Tennessee?
You pick who you want.
No, actually, I'm gonna go with I don't know how to thumbnail this, but the people that thought the playoffs should be 12 teams. Those are my haters and losers. Non-biasly, the 12-team playoff has been a disaster so far,
Not
and
good.
it's been an extreme advocate for 8 teams making it. Every single one of the first round games was a blowout. The closest one on paper was the Notre Dame Indiana game, and if you watched or listened to that game wasn't close at all. SMU got absolutely dismantled at Penn State. Clemson had a snowball's chance against Texas, but they were down 31-10, and let's be honest, the refs started throwing flags just to make the game entertaining because the first 2 games were blowouts. And then obviously the Tennessee at Ohio State game. The playoffs should have never been 12 teams. 4 teams was great. If anything, I would listen to 8 teams. But I was an advocate. I was an advocate for 6. I said this to Nathan and Patrick on the way home. Let the top 2 teams get buys, and then let the other 4 duke it out. There's never been a season in college football history where 12 teams deserve to play for a national championship. Period. That's just how I feel. That's my opinion. Feel free to make it yours. If anything, the BCS is the closest thing to a true national championship. I like having a format where teams get to play their way in. But even in the 4-team playoff, we had blowouts. I don't know.
No, I think there's too many. I think 12's too many, but I told y'all.
People, including myself, are going to find a way to bitch about anything, and that's just what I'm doing. And this isn't biased because if it was an 8-team playoff this year, Tennessee would have been the first team left out,
And we would have been bitching and moaning.
and we would have been bitching very hard about it. But I think 8's better than 12. But even then, with this 12-team playoff, they're gonna have to do it like NFL after the first round and reseed once they get to 8. Because Oregon Ohio State should never be a quarterfinal game. It just shouldn't be, especially if Ohio State plays the way they did this weekend. Just absolutely should not be a quarterfinal game, especially when you have Penn State and Boise State on the other side of the bracket.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Mark my words. I want this on recording. They will expand this playoff to 16. I don't know when, but it's coming.
You're right, and it's going to be the wrong move.
It is. And the only thing that will eliminate is buys. They won't have a need for buys at that point. Like every team will play in the first round and then they'll move on. But they will do it. And I read an article the other day, it pretty much guarantees they'll do it because of the TV inventory and the money involved. So they're going to do it. And it's like the NCAA right now is they're floating the idea again of expanding the basketball tournament. I was like, 68 teams is enough. You want this tournament to be elite. 68 teams out of 300 and something, and they're wanting to go up now to 78. Well, it won't stop there. It's continually grown over the years. Remember it was 64. Well, we need to add more teams. And they went to 66. Now to 68. Now they're wanting to go to 78. Jim Boeheim for years, we need to get to 94 or 96. Like, where does it stop? Are you just going to let all 300 in at some point?
It's going to be the 1,028 team bracket that I showed you a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, exactly. And it'll never stop. it should be hard to qualify to get into this thing, and that's the way it should be. I think eight's the perfect number, but whatever. Tennessee got in. I love it. I love it. It's great. My hater and loser, and I've not been able to do a lot of research on this Harbin, but from what the guy at the convenience store told us there in Columbus, my hater and loser of the week, and I can't find his name, but the mayor of Columbus, Ohio, I don't know if he's still with us or if he's passed away or if he's still in office or what, but apparently he led the charge to ban the sale of flavored tobacco products within the city limits of Columbus, Ohio. And we were there at the gas station yesterday and we were getting some ice and some other stuff before we went to the stadium. And I looked
I
back
believe his
behind.
name, believe his name is Andrew Ginther.
Okay. And
Maybe.
maybe I haven't got to look it up yet, but we looked behind the counter and I was like, what flavor of Zen is that back there? It was just a gray container with nothing on it. And the guy said, "Oh, they're not flavored." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Oh, we can't sell flavored tobacco products here in the city limits of Columbus." And he went on to say it's because the mayor that enacted this or pushed this through smoked menthol cigarettes all his life and got lung cancer, and he just decided to take it out on everybody else. So that's not what our government should be worried about right now. It's just not. And anytime I see stories like that, it makes me hate our government even more than I already do. So that guy is my hater and loser of the week.
Yeah, so they had non-flavored Zins, but you could also buy a pint of rum that was sitting on the counter.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, let's worry about not putting out Coleman or Peppermint Zins out. But you can buy a damn pint of Parrot Bay for $8.99 and everything's okay. Unbelievable.
Love it. Guessing he's a Democrat. I'll have to look him up and see. But anyways, Harbin, I'm exhausted. I'm sick. Not just because we lost, but physically,
I'm
I'm
sick and tired.
sick and tired of being sick and tired, Harbin.
That's correct.
Um, yeah, long weekend, but enjoyed it. There was a lot of listeners of the YY8 podcast up there this weekend. I'm so sorry that we didn't get to meet up with everybody. I had no idea where we were going. I kept trying to find out the whole weekend. We never really even figured out where we were going until we left to go to that spot. So, hope everybody had fun up there besides the game. It was very, very, very cold. I had so many dang clothes on, I couldn't almost bend over to tie my shoes there before we went in. Um, but it was fun getting to go on the road again, even though this was my fifth straight road loss dating back to South Carolina 2022. So, South Carolina 2022, Alabama 2023, Arkansas and Georgia this year, and now Ohio State. So, five in a row for Nease. Not looking good. Parker Profit left a comment on the Instagram YY8 Instagram page. Hashtag keep Nease in Knox. Maybe he's
Many are
on the
saying.
many are asking.
Uh, I do want to say there's probably a combination of having you and Austin Hayes in the same city.
Probably.
I mean, he's a black cat in and of itself in more facets than just Tennessee road games. And then you add you to the equation. I don't even know why I got in the truck to go, to be honest with you.
It was a mistake on your part.
Yeah, it is. But this blood's on your hands. It's not on mine.
I said it, I tweeted it, posted it. You either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. I can do those things,
You can't do both.
but I've become the villain.
Yeah, yeah.
I can do either one, but
You passed up hero a long damn time
yeah,
ago.
touche.
Yeah.
Um, let's see. What else was I going to say before we head out, Harbin? It's been a whirlwind year. Looking back to last January here on the show, we started out with talking about Tennessee winning the Citrus Bowl, blowing out Iowa. We went into basketball, the men winning the SEC championship, going to the Elite Eight. Then we go into baseball. Baseball won the SEC championships. Went to Omaha, watched the Vols win the national championship. Soaked that in for a couple months, and then football started. And we've had a really good football season. I got to go on the road to Arkansas and Georgia, and then of course we went to Ohio State this weekend. So I've been all over the globe. Harbin's been a couple places as well this year on the road. So it's been a fun year of Tennessee athletics. We're looking forward to 2025 and continuing the trend. Tennessee basketball is number one in the country, so they're really good again. Tennessee baseball is going to be number one or two again this year. National title contenders, we assume. So it's going to be another big year in 2025, and YY8 will be here for it, Harbin.
That's right. We'll be here.
We'll be here. Well, we're going to take a couple weeks off. We got Christmas coming up this week. We got New Year's coming up the next week, and we'll be back when the calendar flips. And we'll get it going with basketball. Tennessee's got Arkansas right out of the gate in SEC basketball, so they'll have to come out swinging. They've got two, you could say, tune-up games before that, so they need to get things right before this gauntlet of Southeastern Conference play starts. But we'll be here to talk about it. Harbin, last show of the calendar year, not of the season of YY8. Do you have any closing comments?
It's been a fun year. Elite Eight, national championship in baseball, college football playoff appearance in football, from a Microsoft Excel championship.
Can't forget that.
Obviously not. That's probably the most important one. From an overall standpoint, you really can't ask for much more. I love Danny White. He's got this thing absolutely rolling. Tony Vitello, Rick Barnes, Josh Heupel, Holy Trinity. Slightly sacrilegious. I apologize for that. But I love all three of those men. The ladies are doing well in their respective sports. We're doing great.
That we are.
We have sour taste in our mouth right now, but let's not let it deter us from what's ahead of us going into 2025. And shout out to all of our friends and listeners that made the trip to Columbus. First of all, Andrew's physical therapy. Mike and Adam made the trip. Hate that we didn't get to link up with them. Landry and Undy were there. I'm going to miss a few people, but obviously
Jeff and Jared Burton.
Oh, yeah. Jeff about had to fight his way out of the stadium. I don't know how I could forget him. I talked to him for 30 minutes on the phone home the way today.
Yeah, and I had got a text from Osmond this afternoon, and it said Burton grabbed a guy by the throat and Jared had to break them up. I said, yeah, I know. He called Harbin on the way home. And we said that guy backed off of him when he heard he was from Mascot.
That's right. Yeah. At first, he just thought he was from Knoxville, and then he found he was from Mascot, and the guy changed his tone. So,
yeah, he saw Burton. He said, "Oh, that guy's a Fountain City guy."
Yeah. So to the Burton boys, Jeff and Jared, shout out to y'all.
Yep.
Hey, we didn't get to link up with you guys. Hayes twins, Connor, Keaton, and his boys came by. Obviously, your uncle. Shout out to Chris for being our tour guide.
Yep.
Very nice guy. And his daughter, that is a UT student currently. She's got the brains of the family.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is there anybody else?
I'm trying to think. We got to give.
Well, and Kayleen and Alec.
Yeah.
Kayleen and Alec were there.
We got to give Angie Burns a shout out.
Of course. Kayleen and Alec, we ran into them at the Rusty Bucket.
Yep. So we visited a couple places there in Columbus. The Rusty Bucket. We actually went to both Rusty Buckets, but we went to the wrong one first because I can't read text messages. So then we had to go to the other Rusty Bucket. And then before that, we went to what was that? I called it Frodo, but
It was an Irish pub. I forgot the name of
Fato's Irish Pub.
it. It was a very solid Irish pub.
It was good.
I really enjoyed that place.
It was good.
And I split the G on my first Guinness, first try.
That
Not
you
my
did.
first Guinness in my life, but the first Guinness I had there. So
There's a couple fellas in there watching Crystal Palace and Arsenal or whatever that Palace team's called in the Premier League. They were all into that. So
it was Crystal Palace.
the American football was secondary in that place yesterday, but it is what it is. We all aren't perfect.
Hey, soccer's the biggest sport in the world.
It is, but yeah, we visited those two places, then visited the Wendy's late last night, which was in hindsight a huge mistake.
Yeah, and then Patrick circled the hotel 17 times and we
Yes.
finally got there.
Yeah, shout out to Patrick. He drove not ideal conditions driving up on Friday night. It's spitting snow. There's condensation all over the road, black ice. He's sliding all over the place different times. So shout out to him driving us up there and back. Especially with me riding with him. As I was getting in the front seat this morning, I had a cup of hot chocolate in my hand and it literally proceeded to fly out of my hands as I go into the truck. And it's like one of those things when you're doing something hard. I told you this, and it's in slow motion, and you see it, and you're like trying to. I see this cup, and it's literally vertical, straight up and down, and I'm like, just catch it. And when I go reach my hand out to catch it, it flips the cup completely upside down, and the lid comes off, pours hot chocolate all in the seat. It like puddles up in the seat, and it's going into the back seat. Thank God he had leather seats.
This was at 8 a.m.
Yeah.
and it was roughly 18 degrees. Everyone's tired. We're ready to get on the road. And Nice just decides to dump some Swiss Miss on these leather seats of this, this
Yeah,
Chevy.
I did.
If this tells you anything, I know we've went way too long on this, but if this tells you anything, I was getting in the back seat behind the passenger side, and it puddled up so hard on these leather seats that it was dripping into the back floorboard. I mean, there's a 0% chance Nathan got more than two sips out of this hot chocolate, and just like a pissed off 3-year-old, just dumped it in the seat.
Patrick has a young child. He, I'm sure he's used to that happening, but not from a 40 plus year old dumping hot chocolate. I mean, I think I took like 3 or 4 sips out of it because it was still pretty hot, and yeah, it was just a total disaster. Just a total disaster. But
This
anyway,
is a catastrophe.
yeah, it was unbelievable.
It was a lot like the game.
It was fitting that it happened. And also, don't forget that we were meeting my uncle on the other side of the hotel, and I didn't even bother to call him and tell him that we were over here cleaning up a puddle of hot chocolate out of the front seat, and he's just standing over there out in 18-degree weather. Who knows what the wind chill was? And he calls like, "Where you all at?" Oh, sorry, I'm cleaning up my mess. So, anyways, thank you all for listening this year. I'll post the numbers at some point, but it's been a record-breaking year for the YY8 podcast. We've picked up a lot of subscribers on our YouTube page, a lot of listeners on Spotify. I went through and looked at the Spotify Wrapped information the other day, Harbin, and hadn't really got to like dive deep into it, but gained a lot of new listeners, a lot of new subscribers this year. So thank you guys, and we look forward to doing it again next year. We should be back. I'm gonna let Harbin go. His eyes are getting big. The Cowboys are playing, even though they've been eliminated. I want him to be able to watch that second half against the Bucks. So
Cowboys are dominating,
of
even though we
course they
can't get in
are.
it. Yeah, yeah, we're just messing up our draft pick at this point.
Uh,
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable. Harbin, we'll see you next year. Not next football season, but next year in a couple weeks.
Hey, Parker McCollum, it's been a hell of a year.
It has a record-breaking year all around. We love Tennessee athletics. I know it's football season is now over, and football is what stirs the pot here, but we got a lot of other things that we can root for and cheer for here. That's on the national stage. So, looking forward to talking about it next year. For Harbin, I'm Negative Niece. Again, thank you to Andrew Physical Therapy for partnering with us. And you've been listening to the Section YY8 podcast.
We love you guys.